So addictions. I don't know about anybody else, but I can definitely confess for myself that I can get addicted. I was totally addicted to tobacco. Started at a young age. I basically, they have AA, which is Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm in EA, Everything Anonymous, meaning everything in this world, every gift that God has given can be turned into an addiction. And our natural state is we're looking for a way out of wherever we're hanging out, something better. So that's where drugs come in. I mean, sex, even money and power. Um, there's how many are there? Food, sugar. It goes on and on because all these things give you a temporary alleviation from whatever pain we're still feeling, loneliness, alienization. So yeah, it's easy to become addicted to things, and then people have their preferences. Amen. Once told a brother, he said, just don't do the alcohol and the drugs. Pick one of the two. I watched years ago. I watched a Towns Meeting of the People, Ted Koppel, and it was all about the drug problem. That was during the drug wars back in the 80s, probably, or the 70s. And it was an all-nighter. They had, hours and hours. They took over one of the stations, and people called in. They had all the experts speaking, people legalization for marijuana at the time, the DEA, and on and on. And then having all the statistics of what was occurring. How many people were dying, how many people were attracted to different drugs, how many people were imprisoned, how much money all that was costing the country. And so it went on and on. And it was interesting. It was interesting to watch the points of view. And at the end of it all, Ted Koppel goes, okay, well, here's a question. Why do people want these drugs? I mean, in a country like the United States, where we do have an abundance of the necessities of life in comparison to any time in the history of the world. And yet people are so unfulfilled. I mean, people who have money and have everything, wives and children and everything that people desire in the world. And yet they're alcoholics, they're drug addicts, or they have other addictions, which can even be worse, like money and power. So, why are people like that? And that was the end of there was like this big question mark, of course, without an answer. And so I'm watching it, and I'm hearing the answer. It's because we don't feel full because we don't know our Father. That's the answer. And so the pilgrimage that I've experienced in myself has been a progression. I mean, when we first started walking, we had tobacco, which I was already a smoker to the bone, really enjoyed it. We had weed, which I was also a smoker of weed. And we had coffee. And so those were our three things, and of course food. But I believe the coffee, tobacco, and weed was definitely a stronger connection to us than the food. And in the early years. And Amen gave that. It was perfect for the culture we were coming out of. It was perfect for connecting with a lot of people who were of a similar space that could receive us. It was a perfect reflection of Amen, of where he was coming from. And he saw everything already. He knew what marijuana was, and he knew he wasn't going to do it forever. Not like he was. And the tobacco the same. And food even, that Amen, he was already in another place than the brothers and sisters. He was giving us a bridge. So, as the years went on, we ended up in we had a property given in Red Mountain. And when Amen moved on that property, he started cutting out some of those addictions. I mean, even changed up food eating completely, healthy, growing our own food, and talking to us about, he told me one time, he said, one of the hardest things for brothers to give up is going to be bread. I was like, bread? We were still baking bread upstairs, beautiful bread. And, but he was talking about really that, everybody's in all these addictions, and the simplest foods are really, ideal for kingdom of heaven on earth, for teaching the children and fulfilling them in a right way. Then there was the tobacco. Well, he removed that completely. And he asked to remove the weed, but the brothers and sisters weren't quite ready for that one. So he let it go and then went ahead and grew big crop. The tobacco was, he removed it. And so a lot of people left or couldn't hang out because now I was a total smoking addict. But I was given a grace because Amen wanted me there, and he removed that addiction from me for a whole year. Effortless. I mean, instantaneous. It was miraculous, really. So that I could hang with him. And of course, at the end of the time, I kind of blew that. But, and I started smoking again when at the end of the time that I was there, and I went out in the wind, I was already smoking again. And I knew that at that point wasn't where he really wanted me to be. So I was already juggling something out of order in my life. And see, all the addictions that we have, there's times and spaces for them, you could say, or whether it's an addiction or you're just basically leaning on it, using it as a crutch, which is really what an addiction is. There's times when that's given because these crutches, these things that kind of subdue the pain that we're experiencing within, even though it may be hidden, that the Lord knows we can't face him completely within ourselves all at once. So he allows for these things in a progression. And if we're moving, see, when you start dropping one of these addictions, and it's a progression because there's loads of them, really. Maybe subtler and subtler, but they're the same. As you drop them and you overcome them, there's revelations given. See, the things that you were using that to insulate yourself from, it's now open for you to receive. And so that progression is not just the outer of getting rid of something that maybe isn't really good for you physically and mentally, but it opens you up to a deeper understanding within yourself of his presence. So, my story with tobacco is a really good one because after I left there, I went on the road and I was traveling with a sister at first, and then I ended up on my own on a bicycle, and I was battling with the tobacco. I was trying to quit, but I just didn't have the ability, the strength to do it. And it ended up, I got to the point where I looked at myself like I was like some heroin addict. I'm looking at myself going, man, you're supposed to be a spiritual man and you can't even get down with this space. And it was making me sick. I could feel my throat. I couldn't hardly finish a bugler. I'd have them, I was camped out on a sailboat for a season and I was working on it a little bit. And I'd have cigarette butts half smoked around the space because I couldn't even smoke one. And I was looking at myself, man, that's too bad, dear. So as time went on, I ended up at a brother's place in the high desert. I had a tent set up, beautiful spot. And I could see almost 100 miles away from this place. And then down below was the camp, brothers and sisters, Garth and some people he had around him. And I one day decided I'm going to lay this tobacco down. Well, I was preparing because I didn't bring any tobacco up to my little tent. Kept it clean. So all of my tobacco smoking was down below. And so when I go up there at night, no tobacco. So when I decided I was going to see if I could break this addiction, I went up there and did a 10-day fast. Just water. And 3 days into the fast, I'm sitting up there. Now I got the space clean. I got a Bible there. I got a book on how to build looms because I was working on a loom. And that was it. Clean as a whistle. Water. So I'm sitting up there, and 3 days into it, the Lord's voice comes to me clear, His presence. And He says, well, are you ready to lay down the tobacco? Now, I'm not desiring a smoke. I'm 3 days into a fast, have no desire for a smoke at all. And this little guy inside of me starts running around going, see, the anxiety I was going to feel going down amongst the people, that was what the tobacco represented as a crutch. Because this little guy started running around inside of me going, oh no, anything but that. That was a revelation. Totally. I mean, crystal clear. And I wasn't ready. So I said, amen, I'm not ready. He says, well, when you get done to fast, go down there and have you a smoke. So here I am. That's my first fast there. That's when I ended up on the boat after that. That's right. So a year later, I end up back at the same place, camped at the same spot, and did a 10-day fast. And 3 days into the fast, amen comes to me and says, are you ready to lay it down now? I said, yes, I am. He said, so be it. And that was that. It was gone. It's gone for years and years. I mean, the first few months might have been beepers, but it was removed. And the revelation I got from that, which I believe is true with everything, is that you start becoming aware of things in you or that you're participating in that are not being given by the Father, that they're things that have to go or be altered. And you can't fix it of yourself. You can't increase your desire to get rid of it. You're just becoming aware that it needs to go. So now it starts, you could say, the living prayer, Lord, help me with this, get this off my back, because I want to be pleasing to you, of course, is the motivation. And then He takes you through a progression. And part of the progression that I came to understand through this experience, thinking about it, was that the part that's a little painful when you're still under something, but you're very well aware that it's not pleasing to the Father for you to be under that, there's a character that He's instilling. Of course, of His grace and forgiveness, and that you don't have to carry the burden of that if you're honest with Him. But there's also the recognition that you can't fix yourself, that you're waiting on Him, and that He has to alter your will or strengthen your will enough that you can hold your mud. And so that interim is creating a relationship of total dependence on His hand, which is a huge thing that's been lost in this world. Huge. The way we look at ourselves, the way we look at others. So yeah, the addiction, even though, mostly you're not going to see a whole lot of good directly in the addiction, you can see that through the sickness, we're being healed. Because the deepest things in us are not the outer things. They're just reflections. And a lot of times, if we're children of God and He's working on us, He's using those outer things to create, to recreate, and reestablish right relationship with Him. It's through that what I would look at, He gives us the strength and power over things as we've accomplished right relationship with Him. Amen.